Hi, everybody. I'm so excited. Today I am here with my friend, Natalie. Welcome.
Hey, everybody.
Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to veganism.
Well, it's funny. I guess I've been vegan for like 15 years now. I was always one of those animal lovers, like for my whole life. I have loved like animals, and I just kind of hadn't made the connection that like, oh, I'm also eating animals. And, I read a book actually called The Diversity of Life by E.O. Wilson. He was actually a Harvard biologist who passed away, I think, this last year. And the book was not about veganism. The book was just about like the diversity. It was about all of life on Earth and the diversity within it. And kind of what it did for me was I had this vision in my head of like humans being at the apex of some, tree of life, like the top of the pyramid. And the book really kind of just struck that down for me. And I was suddenly like, oh my gosh, all of these other creatures are also thinking and feeling. And I'm thinking about their value from my own human perspective. I should probably be thinking about their value, differently. And that was kind of like the seed that got planted that sent me down the path to becoming, vegetarian and then eventually vegan. It's funny because a non-vegan actually kind of, I would give her the credit for turning me vegan, because I was like, well, I'm vegetarian, and she, and I'm like, and I'm vegetarian for the animals. And then she actually worked in Massachusetts for like an agricultural extension service. And she was like, well, if you're vegan for the animals, like, why are you still drinking milk? Because I'm telling you, she's like, I've been on dairy farms and it's pretty awful. And then I was like, what? And that sent me down the path to then exploring the dairy industry and realizing like, oh, if I want to be consistent here, I'm going to have to not eat animals and not drink their secretions, and the rest is kind of history.
Oh, I hear that. I mean, that's how we started too, just being vegetarians and thinking that, okay, we checked all the boxes. We're not hurting animals anymore. I mean, cows just make milk, that doesn't hurt them. And I get that. I really get
I think people, I actually think the majority of people, if you were to ask them about the dairy industry, they just haven't thought too deeply about it. They're like, we need to drink this for healthy bones. And the dairy industry, if you give them credit for anything, you can give them credit for pretty effective marketing, because you're like, no, there's no need for you to drink breast milk through your adulthood. That milk is meant for a baby. Yeah. And I think most people just haven't thought it through.
And for a baby of a different species, that's going to turn that little baby calf into a ginormous cow.
I know.
What does it do in a human body?
Yeah. And separately, it's funny to me because I have had friends who have been like, well, I'm very concerned about the phytoestrogens in soy. And I'm like, but you're drinking milk, which has like amazing amounts of hormones, from a mammal. Like, I would be much more worried about like the actual estrogen in cow milk, right? But I think, again, effective marketing has made people kind of not be rational around what dairy really is and whether we really need it, which obviously we do not for optimal health.
Oh, I was all the way enrolled in dairy. I mean, my mom worked for the Swedish.
I know.
So we had dairy breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. It was like my oxygen. And then somebody told me, like a doctor suggested maybe trying going dairy free for a week. And I'm like, well, you're obviously insane. I'm not gonna do that.
I mean, I think we've talked about this before, but like both sets of my grandparents were dairy farmers. And my grandfather was one of the early Organic Valley dairy farmers. He had a dairy farm. It's organic, which, by the way, makes no difference to the cows. It's just they're eating organic feed, but really the same kind of heartbreaking stuff happens, separating babies from their mothers, and just holding cows. And like, I mean, I guess for organic, you get access to pasture, but in reality, I mean, that doesn't mean much. It means like there might be a pasture nearby, but like it doesn't, the cows are not spending tons of time in it. And I know firsthand because as a child, I spent a ton of time on my grandfather's farm, and I didn't quite actually get why there were like all of these huts with all of these baby cows in there. Do you know what I mean? I just didn't think it through. I didn't think about it. Now I look back at that and it's like rather, because the baby cows were so sweet. And I just remember almost like going and petting them like you would a dog, not thinking, oh, these are infants that have been separated from their mothers, so yeah, good to ditch dairy. I'm all about it.
Yeah.
Get it out of the schools.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? Why is it?
Mhm.
Yeah. We need a plant-based lobby, a strong plant-based lobby. And I know people are working on it.
Yeah. Starting with an alternative in schools and then just moving away from that completely because it's hurting. I mean, when we quit dairy, how we got rid of asthma and seasonal allergies. And I mean, my son couldn't concentrate in school because he couldn't breathe,
I know. Yeah. It's pretty awful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
he doesn't have that problem anymore.
That's amazing. I mean, that is so great.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
Yeah. I think and for me personally, when that doctor mentioned that I should try not using dairy for a week, he did that because of my seasonal allergies. But to me, it seemed very extreme, which I think is so funny. I giggle at that word now because what is extreme, like forcibly impregnating a cow and then stealing their baby and then probably killing the baby, depending if it's a boy or a girl, if they can be useful, that is extreme. But I wasn't willing to see that because I didn't know that there was an option. I thought that was the only way.
It really tells you the power of culturation. Like, it makes me wonder, what else are we not seeing right now?
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, what else am I not assessing that? Because to have spent, I mean, still even though I've been vegan for 15 years, obviously I still spent the majority of my life to date, like unconsciously engaging in what to me at the time seemed like really benign activities that were completely in opposition to where my heart is for animals and the type of person I want to be, And so what else? I mean, I think it does send you down a path of like being really open to considering information you may not have, you may not have thought about or evaluated, so yeah, it's another benefit of being vegan.
Yeah, I love that. And I love being gentle with ourselves when we do figure out that there's a better way, there's another way. Because I don't feel like I'm a better person than anybody else, but I know in my heart that I'm a better person than I was 10 years ago.
100%. I'm with you. I think that's very well said.
Mm-hmm. And just like not being scared of change and just being like, when I first went vegan, I was at a fair and they were selling like lip gloss or something like that, and it had honey in it. And my friend pointed out, but honey isn't vegan. I'm like, and in that moment, I felt so stupid and ignorant and just like I had failed going vegan because I hadn't made but you can't fail going vegan. The only way you fail is if you don't try, if you don't keep like showing up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. Where does honey come from? I hadn't even thought of it. It doesn't grow in trees. It's not a plant. It comes from plants, but there's an animal involved. How do I feel about that?
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's important to remember it's not about your personal purity. Like, you might walk outside and step on an ant and like, you can't not, you're just going to, I like the way you put it. Like, it's about striving, like to do the least harm. It's not about like perfection and ensuring that like you remain pure in some way. It's about doing everything you can to reduce suffering. And when you learn more, then you change. If you learn something new, then you change what you're doing, you know?
Yeah, I feel like the difference with the ants, for example, is maybe not stepping on them on purpose.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And then the things that we do not on purpose, we'll just open our eyes to it and maybe shift, maybe take a different route, you know? So
Yeah.
weird.
I'm always worried, like, I want to make it like, you know, with honey, I'm like, oh, I don't want it to seem impossible to someone who is today eating animals,
Yeah.
you know, and where I was 15 years ago, like that, like, oh, you know, it's so hard. There's so many different rules, you know, and part of me is just like, okay, well, be vegan except for honey. Or if eggs are the thing that like, you're like, I can never give up eggs. Well, then be vegan except for eggs. Like, I don't, you know, I worry that like, I don't want to make it, I don't want it to seem impossible for people, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, I hear that because I was definitely in that situation. To me, it seemed unobtainable because it seemed like the shift from where I was to where I was supposed to be, like the steps were just too high. I couldn't even reach the first step. So I love that we were just like, okay, so I could never be vegan because I could never give up dairy. And that's basically where we started. But then I'm like, but I really don't enjoy the texture and the thought and how it feels when I eat meat from cows, chickens, and pigs. That I'll start there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very
Yeah.
empowering to start there and still be able to like have my dairy and not like give anything up, because I felt when it came to chicken, eggs, no, chickens, pigs, and cows, I didn't give that up. I quit. Like, I'm like, I don't want, I had that just like, I felt so empowered, like this, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And then seeing how that was possible, it opened up doors.
To more. Yeah. Yeah. It's actually maybe right. You can't, doing it all at once can feel overwhelming. So do it in steps. That's probably the best way to get it to go about any life change or any habit change, really. And then you just got to keep doing it. And then if you make a mistake, I remember, you know, early days going to like a Jamba Juice and having them ask me like, do you want whey protein? And I was like, yeah. And like, I'll admit it, like, I didn't know that whey protein was dairy. Like, I just, you know, this was a long time ago, but like, I didn't even know at the time. And it was only later when I like looked it up and I was like, oh no, that was definitely not what I wanted, you know, but like, you learn as you go.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like somebody's gonna come and like, yoink, here, give me your vegan
No,
card.
exactly.
But yeah, we just be gentle with ourselves. I'm curious. And what I did too was like, I kept educating myself, right? And I kept having fun and making more and more just amazing meals. Like all of a sudden we had a different way of eating breakfast that we all loved. Oh, check. One meal a day taken care of. What do we usually eat for lunch? I wonder if there are options for that. How about dinner? And then just like, okay, what would I have eaten today? What do I feel like eating? I wonder if I can recreate that, but not having any of the animal products in it that I don't want to eat. So just being curious and.
Well, and I think sometimes people can feel like, oh, when you go vegan, it's so limiting. But like really what you're doing is you're getting rid of like 4 meat types that most people eat. Like, and you're replacing them with like a whole variety of things that honestly, I feel like since we went vegan, I eat way more diverse, you know, set of foods than I did prior. And I'm always like, oh no, the one thing that I worry about being vegan is like, you know, if I ever like get cancer, let's hope I don't. But if I were, I feel like people will be like, she got cancer because she's vegan. And I'll be like, no, I want to tell you about like the first 25 years of my life. Like, I want to tell you that like Jello with canned fruit was like called a salad, you know, when I was growing up. With like a Cool Whip container on top, you know? So like, I worry about that kind of thing. Sometimes like but I feel like now I just eat like a much wider, and fortunately my kids also eat a very wide variety of foods, like, and it's mostly because they've been since, they've just, I early on read Disease Proof Your Child, which I actually highly recommend. It's like by Dr. Joel Furman. And it's really just about like introducing, not taking that initial, like, I don't like that from kids when they're like, I don't like that. And saying like, oh, it turns out that this child does not like broccoli. It's like, no, you just keep introducing it to them. And now both of my kids love broccoli. You know what I mean? With like nutritional yeast and sesame oil on it, like they will gobble it up,
Mhm. Oh, I love that. And that's what we do too. We just keep like, you don't have to eat it, but I want you to try it. And I want you to keep trying it. And like, even for my little girl, I have to be like, you have to try it. And if you get to try it, and if you don't like it, you can spit it out. So that it's kind of like, and then the other day she was just like, I kind of like the white carrot, Mom. I didn't know that carrots came in
That's so
color.
cool.
I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, and it just tastes like hummus, right? Because you would just like use it as
A vehicle for hummus. Yes, as all carrots should be
yes,
used.
right.
Yeah.
Well, that brings me to my next question. So when you went vegan, was your whole household vegan at the time, or how was that whole process?
Yeah, so no, I didn't have kids, and I wasn't married to my husband then. He was my boyfriend. And he, as you know, you've met him, and he has a very soft heart, and I basically, I tried to speak to his soft heart around these issues. And I mean, early on, he kind of got it, but he was resistant because it's just a big life change. And he started out by he was like, okay, well, when I go I won't eat meat at home because I wasn't making it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, when I go out to restaurants, I'll ask them if the meat was humanely raised. That was his kind of step in that direction. And he would ask, and they'd be like, he was like, where was this raised?
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, hell, if we know, they had no idea. And so by default, he kind of stopped eating meat because of that, because they never knew. And then, he one day, because I remember the last time I actually remember the last time he ate meat. And it was a friend of ours had like gotten a lamb and had it like slaughtered, humanely in a small slaughterhouse kind of thing, and got it for like him. It was like, I got this for you specifically. We were staying at this friend's house, and it's a difficult situation because it's like the friend went out of his way to get humanely raised meat for my husband. I, at the time, was not eating any meat and was really clear about that. And my husband felt compelled to eat it because, and because he still kind of wasn't there. But I remember driving home from that friend's house and like weeping in the car. Like, I was just like, I can't believe you ate a baby, was really what I said. And my husband, then we had a conversation where he was basically like, okay, I can try to not eat animals, but I can't live a life of deprivation. Like, I can't feel like I'm living a life of deprivation. And so I then set out to be like, well, then I'm going to become the amazing vegan cook. I'm going to make amazing things. And I'm going to like, at the time I found like Isa Chandra Moskowitz's blog, The Post-Punk Kitchen. And I started making like a whole bunch of the things that she had on her blog. And so I then set out to just become a great vegan cook. And he stopped eating animals and stopped eating dairy. And I think now there's no other, he knows no other way. And he's not like hope he's a passionate vegan, as you know. He's like totally now on the same page, and it's all worked out perfectly. So yeah.
That's beautiful.
I'm trying to find the wisdom that I would have there for somebody in, who's dealing with that. And for me, I know that I couldn't deal with living with someone who wasn't on the same page, it would be like way too fundamental for me. You know, because I would endlessly be trying to like change them. You know what I mean? So I think it's like, obviously you need to just introduce someone who is like a meat and potatoes person who has never contemplated not being a meat and potatoes person. You have to ease them into it with great food. That would be my recommendation. Make amazing vegan food where they can't like and there is amazing vegan food. Make amazing vegan food and they won't feel like they're giving up anything.
I totally agree with all that, because that's how it sounds very much like my own story with my family and my husband. And yeah, I just started getting excited and making things in the kitchen, and just like, because I didn't personally want to buy any more animal products. He did his own thing outside of the home.
Yeah.
And I mean, just having his own journey, you know, with the whole thing. And then he would come home and we would create really fun food together too. And it just like slowly just being like, oh, and he's like one of the most active, vocal vegans I know now, you know?
Yeah, which is awesome. Yeah.
But it was a journey. And there were points where I was just like, I feel really alone. And that's actually how you and I met, because reached out to vegan outreach and found you as my mentor, which is
so cool. Yeah. I had signed up to be a mentor mostly because I was like, you know, what can I do in my free time outside of work to just help the vegan cause? And throughout the years, I've like, you know, you are the lasting friend that I have found through that process. So like, huge shout out to vegan outreach on that. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Very
and it really helped, because and it was so awesome. I mean, you guys didn't live very far from us, and we were
that was amazing.
This other family with their kids pretty much the same age, and we get to share.
So cool. Yeah,
celebrate lots of like Thanksgivings together, and just it's been awesome.
It's been so cool. It makes me also really happy. Like, I feel like our kids, you know, when even just several years ago, you could say the word vegan and people might not know what you're talking about. And I feel like that has completely changed. Like our kids are now inheriting like a world where it's very rare to find someone who doesn't know what you're talking about when you say you're vegan. They may not still get it right. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, you're gluten-free, you know, whatever. But they know the word. And I feel like it's a new world for our kids where they're not, you know, our kids are not the only vegans at their school, which is pretty awesome. And soon they will be just one of many, two of many vegans at their school. It's my hope.
Yeah, I just got the hit that we're like creating these little leaders too, to just like stand out and stand up for something you really believe in.
Totally agree.
Gift, right?
Totally agree.
So excited.
Hey, I know.
So what do you love most about being vegan?
What do I love most about it? I mean, part of it is that, I mean, if living in concert with my beliefs is really what I love most about it. I mean, I want to be someone who is thoughtful and consistent and is making ethical choices. And so, I mean, it also, I you know, I have this in some sort of parallel universe. I feel like I could have lived my whole life oblivious and like, and maybe in some ways, you know, as it said, like not being aware can have its own set of blissfulness, but not really. Like I don't want to be contributing to this. And I like the feeling that I have that with every meal, I can both positively impact the planet, because obviously the rainforest, you know, I think about the rainforest and I know people are concerned with the rainforest burning down. And I am very concerned about that too. And I look at the smoke and think to myself, that's the secondhand smoke of the meat industry. And so I don't want to be contributing to that. I don't want to be contributing to animal suffering. I know, you know, that I think there are positive health impacts that I'm also really happy with. So, I mean, I want to live in line with my ethics, and veganism is a very important part of that to me.
Oh, I love all that.
Yeah.
What have been some of your challenges?
Well, I think, in past workplaces, I've worked in more male dominated meat eating kind of dynamic situations, and that the challenge can be kind of like, you almost are like, do I want to, this is like not, I don't know if this is appropriate, but like sometimes you're like, I'm not that interested in coming out as a vegan to these people, because I don't want to have to deal with like the backlash, where I've had situations like early on in my career, I had a boss who was like, oh, you're vegan? Well, for every tofu burger you'll eat, I'll eat 3 meat sandwiches, and I'm just like, oh, that's really mature of you. Great. Like that kind of stuff, like being in an environment where people are both not respectful and just don't get it, can be very challenging, can be just like hard. Not hard in a way where I'm like, oh, I guess I'm gonna have to eat meat now. Oh
Yeah,
no, I'm just like, I wish people got it, and I think the other thing that can be challenging is when you love people and they're like wonderful and kind and caring, and then they're just very dismissive of the reasons why one should choose to be vegan. People who are caring and now, and I feel like people are so distanced from the harm that they are causing that it enables them to just not even think about it, and therefore completely divorce themselves from what's happening within the meat industry. And I think it can be very hard. I mean, we've had Thanksgivings in the past where our children have, like, there's been a turkey set in the middle of the table, and our children like are crying and saying to the host, like, why did you kill this bird? And then the host, who is someone we love very much, was like, I didn't kill it, I didn't kill it. And you're like, you kind of did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, you kind of did. Yes. So that, I think that's the challenging, I think that is the challenging part. The world is not, we're from the future, Kristine, not to get like, and the world is just hasn't quite caught up with us yet. And that can be hard sometimes.
Oh, I hear that. There's the movie, is it called Carnism or something?
Oh yeah. It's Carnism. It's the Simon Amstel mockumentary.
Yeah, they're in the future.
It's so good. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you believe it? They're sitting in support circles and like, can you believe it? I used to eat meat. Oh, can't even say it.
I know. My ancestors
Yes, my ancestors.
Yeah, it is amazing. It is. I mean, and like, I think that is where we're headed. Future generations will look back and say, like, what were we doing? Like,
Yeah, I feel that too. Because there's just a different way. I mean, if we look at how things were, maybe before we didn't have a choice. Like, I'm thinking of my ancestors growing up in northern Sweden and it being cold.
Yeah.
And couldn't grow vegetables maybe during the winter, but we don't live like that anymore. We have we go to a grocery store, and it's not like I go to some specialty only vegan grocery store. I go to Publix, which in Florida is like one of the main grocery stores. And just get a bunch of their produce and like the vegetables, the fruit, the beans, the quinoa, and they have all the different kinds of vegan options there. Like if you want to, you can get vegan turkey, vegan chicken, vegan anything, if that's what you want to eat. So there's absolutely no lack, and we have options. So why not choose kindness?
Totally. I'm with you. Here.
Yay.
Yeah, you'll find that you give up nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hear that, and I really feel like that connection and knowing that you're never alone. Because I remember the first Thanksgiving when we had just met, just like the challenge was really feeling the sadness of all those turkeys that had to give their life for this one meal. And it just like
Yeah.
hit me. I mean, obviously that had been the same thing every year up until this point, and I was in my late 30s, early 40s, and it just hit me. So that was definitely like a challenge, but it didn't mean like I was going to go join and eat a turkey. It was more just like sitting with that and being like, that is really sad.
Yeah.
I am really happy I'm not a part of that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's, you have, even as a vegan, I remember watching Earthlings, which I don't know if you have watched it,
Oh yeah.
okay, so I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not recommending it for like someone who's already vegan, but if you're not vegan, I highly recommend watching that or Dominion. And I remember watching that early on and feeling, I mean, I couldn't watch it all in one go. And I then cried and cried and cried and cried, and like, because it's so much worse than anything you can possibly imagine. Like that, and that's, you almost have to compartmentalize it as a vegan, because to be thinking about it constantly will take you to a place that's like probably not like very good for you to be in. But yeah, it's, how do we, I want, it help, I think those movies help unlock, can help unlock people and enable them to kind of have exactly the experience you had over Thanksgiving, where you're like, oh, this is, you kind of, the turkey isn't even considered,
Yeah.
But if you were to have a turkey in front of you, and I've gone to like animal sanctuaries and had the pleasure of interacting with turkeys, you would not want that turkey hurt. It would be very much like a dog to you, where you would be like, if someone hurt the dog, you would be like, what are you doing? No, you're diabolical.
Right.
And so I think we just need to really understand. And I mean, I don't know I think the answer is like, if you haven't watched Earthlings and you're not vegan, I feel like that is the first recipe for like, well, kind of making the connection in my mind.
Yeah, I hear that. And like when you, and I love the internet. It's so just like, we can make such a big difference to so many people. Like I saw this turkey meeting his family, human family, and raising his arm, running towards them and like hugging them,
I
it's
know.
like sentient being, someone that wants to be alive and feel love. And certainly
Albert, that's Albert the turkey. I remember Albert. Yeah, I know. So sweet.
Yeah.
Just wants to like sit in your lap and get some pets.
Yeah. And when
awesome.
regarding Earthlings, my husband and I watched a movie together, and we went through like a whole box of Kleenex, but we came out different on the other side. And it was just like something that's clicked. And I'm so grateful that we watched it, because that's when I made that connection that I'm not giving anything up. I'm just aligning with what was already inside of me. And I didn't know how bad it was.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. Well said.
So let me see. What do you do? What do you get when you go to the grocery store? What are some of your staples, and what do you keep in your pantry?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a whole set of like, aspirational dried beans, where I'm like, I'm gonna make these dried beans, like, but I do have like that, I'm always like, well, if something happens with the pandemic and supply chains, like I've got these like lots of dried beans, but I don't make them as often as I like probably should. Yeah. So, I mean, my kids are self-sufficient in the morning. So they make waffles that I buy, or they have cereal and fruit. So that's typically their lunch. Then I also I buy bread. I always have peanut butter, almond butter, sometimes cashew butter, not as often, but as like staples. I tend to, I mean, I tend to buy like tofu, and I'm not as big into tempeh. It's just not necessarily for me, but tofu, seitan, and then sometimes I get like tofurkey, for example, and like we'll have tofurkey sandwiches. I challenge anyone to be like, this is, I feel like there should be a taste test, because I don't think, you know, in terms of deli slices, I don't think you could distinguish tofurkey from a turkey deli slice. I usually have like always some greens on hand, and I have a big salad recipe that I make that my kids love, because it's like a dressing that has like peanut butter, soy sauce, brown sugar, and lime, basically, which is, and then some water, and it's like amazing. Highly recommend. Just, and then you throw that on anything and you'll like basically love it. But I tend to use our greens mostly in smoothies, which I know you are a smoothie person too, but my kids love smoothies. And really the secret with smoothie is like some greens and some dates and some ice, and then whatever fruit you kind of have around, bananas, you know, and if you have other frozen fruit, great. And then sometimes I add like cocoa powder to it. So, I mean, and then I'll throw in some like chia seeds and or maybe some flax seeds, though chia is the preferred seed in my children's smoothies. And that gives you like kind of a sweet, delicious salad to drink. You know, my kids will request it, which is pretty cool. So, I mean, that's kind of, I'm trying to think of what other staples. I mean, I make like, I always had like red lentils, because they're so like kind of versatile. And so I always have some red lentils and some coconut milk to make like a quick, you know, an easy curry and that kind of thing. Last night I cooked up just some like very easy, like I put some rice in the rice cooker, you know, and chopped up a bunch of vegetables, threw them into like some sesame oil, you know, dump the rice in and have like a fried rice, you know, with cashews kind of thing.
That's what I
It's
ate.
like, yeah. What's that?
That's what we had too.
Oh, really? Last night?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, just like easy. I like don't want to have to think about anything too much. I don't necessarily want to have to follow our recipe. And like you just find out like, oh, actually this is tasty and easy and you know, and healthy, frankly.
Yeah, what I realized, we had a little bit of sesame oil on it and a little bit of maple syrup, and all of a sudden it tasted like what you get at a restaurant. I'm like, I have cracked the code.
Sugar, maple syrup. Yeah, doesn't maple syrup make everything better? My children certainly think so.
Yes,
you know,
for sure.
Yeah.
If I will get my kids to eat vegetables, you know, it's all good.
Yeah, 100%. Yes.
Oh, I love all that. That's wonderful. So yeah, describe your dream dinner.
Oh, well, someone else cooking for me. That is an important one. I am the primary chef in our home, but I really want to go to Veg in Philadelphia, just as a side note. So kind of my dream dinner might involve like a flight to Philadelphia and then going to Veg, which I haven't been to, and I've just heard amazing things. And when I go there, I envision them having a cheese plate made with like, you know, cashew almond cheeses. And in fact, I was just recently at Althea, which is a plant-based restaurant in downtown Chicago, and they have a whole like cheese plate that you can order that has like, I mean, it changes every single time you go. I mean, it's not like I go there that often. I just know it's like different cheeses each time, and they're like aged, and some of them are a little smelly, and like like that just sounds amazing to me. And then they had like pickles that they made themselves, you know, that sounds really good. And then basically the other part of my dream dinner might involve ramen, which sounds, I don't know if Veg has ramen on the menu, but like, even if they don't, maybe they could add it. Like, I love a good ramen. And we've had some like amazing ramen in LA. It's called like Ramen Hood. It's so good. Like, I want to go back there really badly. It was like some of the best ramen. It was the best ramen I've ever had. It's so good when done right. But yeah, that would be my dream dinner.
I love that. And I hear that because Tim will be like, what do you want for dinner? I'm like, anything that you will cook.
Yeah, that is, yeah, that sounds amazing. But
Yeah.
Tim is such a good cook that like,
he is a really good cook.
I mean, anything Tim would make would be
Yeah.
pretty delicious. Yeah. I've never had I don't think Tim has ever made anything that hasn't been like exceptionally tasty.
We joke about his smoothies that we call Dad's Best Brown because
I know exactly what you're talking about.
he would go a little heavy on the veggies. So then I'm like, you need to just like put in a beet or something to just like make the color.
Not make it brown.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yum.
Yeah, but usually and that's the thing too, that I like. People like, if I'm talking to somebody who's just starting out, you're gonna fail. Like I failed so much. Like there's so many things that I made that were just like, oh my God, I am so not eating this.
So bad. Yes.
But I used to fail before I was vegan too. It made some really, really bad things, even though it had animal products in it. So it didn't mean I stopped eating, I kept trying. So
yeah, I remember making Isa Chandra Moskowitz's seitan cutlets early on, and I made them like, and they were so bad that we tried to give them to our dogs who were like food motivated, and their dogs were just like, no, I'm not eating that, I'm not touching that. It was really, really, really bad. I mean, and that's where like, just because that was bad doesn't mean you're not going to make amazing vegan food.
Yeah.
Like it's just, keep experimenting, which is exactly what we did. I now make like, I took some variation of an Isa recipe and I make like a cashew cheese. I mean, it's really just like cashews, water, nutritional yeast, pizza seasoning, and salt. And I, blend it up and I put it on pizza crust as like it's kind of like a creamy pizza, and then add pizza sauce on top. And then all of the various toppings. And it is like a delicious, I'm telling you, it is a very delicious pizza that I make usually like every 2 weeks or so for like a nighttime dinner. And like, I feel like it started out as an experiment that went really badly. And now I've modified it to be like something that like is very tasty. But keep trying is the point.
I love that. And just like Tim made a quiche this weekend that had like the texture of how I remember quiche. And it had like some sort of cashews and tofu in there. And it felt like, okay, so now we're like, this is like step one. We made it the first time. Like maybe next time we try to put in like some tempeh bacon to get more of a smoky flavor. Maybe we'll play with the vegetables because I'm like, I could eat this like once a year. But then we're like, okay, so how can we make it even better?
I know. I feel like Adam has been like, not my favorite.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I'm like, okay, so this was pretty bad. I know. Just keep experimenting.
Yeah, keep having fun.
I mean, now there's so many great. The time that I was really experimenting, we were in a bit of a dark age where there weren't like a ton of reviews of vegan food, and like even when you did search, you didn't find like literally millions of recipes. Now I feel like there's literally millions of recipes, and most people have. I mean, a lot of people have rated them, so you kind of know what you want to try.
That is such a good point. And me as a chef before veganism and today, like before, I would like go to the recipe and follow it to a T.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, oh, these are just recommendations. Okay, so it says cumin.
Yeah.
That garlic.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, just
totally
like
agree.
But yeah, I'm just having fun with it, right? But what other advice would you give to someone who's just starting out?
Well, you've said some of the advice that I would give, which is like, don't be too hard on yourself. Like, you will make mistakes, and just the important thing is that you keep moving in the direction that you want to go. What would be my other advice? I think, I do think it's important for vegans to find other vegans, because sometimes I think you can feel like, particularly if you're not surrounded by other vegans, which I think it's pretty rare still to be like, yeah, I've got this whole great vegan community, you know, like surrounding me. So I would say like seek out communities. They can either be online or in person, you know, to try to find other people, like-minded people, because I think they will be helpful for you. It's helpful for you to feel like there's a group. It's not just you alone who's suddenly had this, you know, realization. And I think if you don't have a you know, community surrounding you, it can feel a little isolating sometimes. So seek it out. Like there's lots of vegans around. Find them, you know. There's, you know, either Facebook or even on Reddit, there's a huge, I mean, you know, you're like old and you're like an old vegan when like, I'm like the community on Reddit, the vegan community on Reddit, I joined when there were 13,000 people and there are now over 900,000 people on the vegan community on Reddit. So, I mean, you'll find lots of people there who you can like, you know, and lots of recipes and advice, and yeah, so that would be my tip.
I love that. And that was one of the things that I did, because I typed in like vegans Chicago, and then I mean,
Yeah,
so that's such a big city at the time that where we lived there, but even vegan Sarasota where we live now, there's, I mean, they might just be just down the street, you know.
yeah, we were walking down the alleyway near where we live, and I was like, Adam, that's a purple carrot box. Like, and purple carrot is like the vegan meal kit service. And I'm like, who lives in that house? Like, we don't know them, you know, but maybe we should get to know them.
Yeah. I love that. I will scan people's carts at the grocery store and be like, oh my goodness, because you already know that you have so much alike if they
Totally.
you know.
Yeah.
Instant friends. I love it.
Exactly.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, it was so great. Thank you. It was so cool to talk to you.
How can people find you if they have any questions or just want to get in touch?
So I'm Natalie Mindrum on Facebook and I think on Instagram, but I may have told you, like I am taking like a hiatus from social media for a bit. Write me. I mean, I'd love to hear from people, and I obviously want to connect with anybody, but I am like doing a social media, I don't know what it would be. Detox is the wrong word, because I'm mostly just like, you know what? Right now I don't have time. So I'm not on social media as much, but reach out. And then my email is nataliemindrum@gmail.com. So I'm always happy to connect with anybody.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristine.